Hello. In this session, we will be covering some of the conclusions IDTechEx has made about the Internet of Things. IDTechEx is an independent market research and events firm providing insights into a range of emerging technologies. We've been studying emerging technologies and assessing them for almost 15 years now, with offices in 4 countries and clients in over 80 countries. We do this predominantly through interviewing and meeting companies throughout the supply chain for these different topics to find out their progress, what they're doing, and we use that information to assess emerging technologies, their markets, and therefore quantify the market potential and really help companies save time and money by understanding how they can get involved in these sectors. We've done this for the Internet of Things, and we have split this market up into these 3 main segments. One of the great and worst things about the Internet of Things is that it is so broad, and so people are therefore very loose in how they define it and what part they play. We see 3 main areas. The first is the Internet of People, which are consumer electronics in the form of smartphones and tablets and computers, which are a mature and very established market. Then at the bottom, there are many other types of ID and sensor systems, ranging from passive RFID with no power source through to tags with sensing capability in their own power source, but these do not have IP addresses. The main thrust of this new things being pursued over the last 18 months to 2 years is things with nodes with an IP address, which is slightly different from the other 2 categories. These are more expensive, but they're more capable, being directly connected to the Internet. The applications of IoT depend on the overlap between the different segments. For example, between the Internet of People and the Internet of Things, we see that these are mostly consumer applications driven by consumer needs such as home automation, healthcare, fitness and assisted living, and consumer services and infotainment. Between the Internet of Things with an IP address and other sensors or identification on systems, these tend to be more industrial and government-based applications, such as infrastructure monitoring, lighting, or transportation monitoring. There is some potential from systems in the bottom to become replaced with nodes and IP address, but that will be fairly limited in our view, because usually those existing systems do the job well and they can be cheaper by being dedicated for the purpose as opposed to a more open universal platform, i.e. nodes with an IP address. I think many in the Internet of Things area are hoping that this will be the next great wave after smartphones and tablets, but we'd like to point out that there are some major differences. In the smartphone world and the tablet world, or what we call the part of the Internet of People, this is a very established, large, mature value chains where people are prepared to spend a lot of money to get the device itself. The Internet of Things, we think, will be very different. These devices are less desirable to buy on their own, and in some cases they may be expected to be integrated into devices or electronics already, and therefore they need to be very low cost. The paybacks are less clear and really little understood, and it's notable that even now, as we approach the end of 2014, we don't see any major companies who are really negotiating or looking to deploy vast numbers of IoT nodes with an IP address at this point in time. And that's because there's not clear payback or clear applications specified yet. Companies are still learning what their needs and applications should be. This is a breakdown of an IoT system with the opportunities to cost reduce the transceiver and the sensor elements, which take up the significant chunk in cost. So why now? IoT has been talked about for 15 years, but we're seeing a few things come together. One is nodes which can have IP addresses which are now effectively infinite. Another aspect is the lower price microcontrollers available with sensors. But I believe the critical two aspects that are driving IoT is firstly that consumers now have something to read or control them in the form of smartphones or tablets. But the second is that the large companies behind consumer electronics are beginning to see some of those markets begin to saturate, and therefore they're looking for the next big thing, and this could drive significant volume. There's also governments heavily investing in this, from smart transportation through to complete smart cities. And a lot of that work has gone in China, but other countries around the world are doing it as well. In a sector as large and fluid and embryonic as this, there's still a huge amount of opportunity. There's many things which have not yet been agreed over. For example, there are many standards, and there are organizations who are creating overarching standards, effectively standards of those standards. But some of those are competing with each other, and so it's difficult to see right now who's going to win. It's also unclear really what application sectors are most promising, and also where the strong margin will be in the value chain, although IDTechEx think that that will be around highly IP or intellectual property protected sensor systems, but less margin around the nodes themselves, which are likely to be made and in high volume at low price points to be more commodity based, but strong value around services, around solution providers and integrators. There's still many opportunities and issues to look at, and that includes security. And while governments are putting in frameworks to have more secure IoT systems, the question is, will consumer electronics companies really implement enough security for the devices that they put out where price is very sensitive? Other aspects, power sources for these sensor nodes, and how will they be powered when the batteries expire, which is why many companies are looking at emerging technologies such as energy harvesting. A few lessons and observations from IDTechEx about this sector. We really break up the application spaces into three main types of groups. The first is those driven by governments, and this is quite a large and profitable group traditionally for suppliers, because governments do not seek an ROI like most companies. They do things for safety, for security, for efficiency. That includes spending a lot of money, for example, in transportation systems to make them much more efficient and cope with more people, through to mandating the use of technologies for aspects such as animal tracking in order to enable control over disease and making sure that economies are not crippled when there is disease. Industry and enterprise, however, is very different. They deploy things to fix a problem, and therefore the success of IoT here will be whether or not suitable problems that industry and enterprise have can be identified, and suitable in the sense that the cost of the implementation of the system provides a strong payback for the company to go through the pain of deploying it. Many tend not to be first-time movers unless there is a strong need for them to be so, but they like to see what others are doing and learn from their experiences rather than risk the upfront money of being a first-time mover. The third aspect perhaps has the biggest potential, and that's really the consumer market, which has shown it can be very high growth. But here, what needs to be thought out is what is the value proposition being created that consumers are willing to pay premiums for. There are examples of many things happening, such as home automation and so on. But it's excitedly being driven by many large companies who need the next big things. These have large amounts of money behind them. They have the infrastructure and the marketing channels to be able to do it, and now they're looking to find the right application sets. So it's a very brief overview of some of the insight IDTechEx has to Internet of Things, and we have significantly more information on our website. I encourage you to take a look at IDTechEx.com, where we cover this technology in more detail. And the primary driver for us to do this is to help companies save time and money by taking them beyond the hype and showing them what the reality is behind these emerging technologies, and therefore how they can profit from these technologies much more quickly than their competition.